We just froze for a little bit on Streamlabs, and it was just a really dumb, happy face.
Swag.
We're just both like this.
What a great way to start the episode tonight. That's excellent.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am Alex.
And I am Ben.
And we are married with dragons.
Oh, we're so professional, just losing it before we even start the stream.
I feel like that happens every time.
Oh, God.
It just froze on our faces looking so weird. We're just like this, like...
We were happy to be here. But we are happy to be here. We are happy to be here, talking about all things Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Got a few bits of news tonight. News.
Yeah.
A funny story. We've got our top 10 homebrew rules for D&D, for DMs and players out there alike.
Yeah, jam-packed.
And then obviously my joke at the end, which is everyone's favourite part.
Yes.
But yes, to start us off, we do have some exciting news, which I'm sure some people have heard about.
Yes. So Critical Role have come out with their own campaign book run by the publishers of D&D, so Wizards of the Coast. And it is...
Have you already forgotten its name?
No, I haven't. I just want to make sure I get it correct. Call to the Netherlands. Call of the Netherlands. I'm thinking of Peter Pan. Call of the Netherdeep.
Wow.
Call of the Netherdeep. I am so sorry.
We are off to a flyer tonight. Absolutely smashing it.
Let me restart that again. So
to the Netherlands.
It's a Disney crossover, okay? D&D meets Peter Pan.
Oh, God. That is definitely not what it is.
Okay.
Try
we
again.
need one of those,
Yeah, take two.
Take two.
Try again.
Okay. So, Critical Role have come out with their new campaign book. Call to the Netherdeep. Call to? It's of.
Call of.
Oh, Call. I got close enough. Call of the Netherdeep. Being, published by the creators of D&D, so Wizards of the Coast.
Co-created by Matt Mercer.
Yeah, co-created and co-led by Matt Mercer.
So for those of you who aren't aware, or if you haven't heard of or seen Critical Role before, Matt Mercer has been the DM for two campaigns now of Critical Role. He's quite well known in the community as someone who does a very good job as being a DM.
I was going to say, I think he's a bit of a DM icon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. So the book is based around concepts. So it's based in the realm that the Critical Role campaigns take place. Apparently, it's going to be taking this campaign book is going to be taking some aspects from the previous two campaigns, but also heavily implementing stuff from the third campaign, which will be releasing within the next week, I believe. The new campaign.
So close.
It's very close. I could be wrong, but coming out very, very soon. The third Critical Role campaign.
Yeah. So with this book, it comes out. Well, it's looking to come out March next year. And every time you say like next year, you think it's so far away, but we're near the end of this year, so it's less than 6 months away now.
It's about 6 months away.
Yeah. So not long now. So
one thing I did think was quite interesting when looking into this campaign book was apparently you're starting at level 3.
Oh, okay.
Which is the starting point. Generally, in campaign books produced by Wizards of the Coast, you'll start at level 1, or you might start at level 10, or level 6 to level 10. I don't think I've come across one where you start at level 3 before. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Sort of still newer character, but like sort of past the tutorial phase.
Did it say why?
I have not read as to why. No, it's simply that's all the information I have at this point.
I guess maybe that's.
I'll have to ask my close personal friend Matt Mercer.
We might have been Netherlands.
Oof.
This is what happens when you get close to the end of the week. Okay,
We're always on close to the end of the week.
Yeah. I just think I bring comedic value.
Absolutely. I won't protest that.
Yes.
I should say. But yes, exciting news that we've got a new campaign book coming out. I'm going to be interesting, like I said, with having some ties to the other campaigns, I'm going to be interesting to see how it all sort of comes together.
Yeah. Yeah, especially well, what I'm most interested about with this campaign book is obviously it's tying some of their previous campaigns together. Is like how if it's just going to be incorporating the world, or will we be meeting some of the known characters as NPCs?
Look, I think that potentially is a draw for a few Critical Role fans out there, is potentially getting to meet potentially some of the same NPCs and whatnot. So, like I said, we don't have a huge amount of information about the campaign so far, but it'll be certainly interesting to have a look regardless, and it'll be interesting to have, you know, Matt Mercer and the crew from Critical Role involved in a legitimate, published work from Wizards of the Coast. So it's exciting nonetheless.
Exciting.
Bit of news for the D&D world that's only come out quite recently.
I haven't seen any alternative covers though yet. So
no, the cover does look quite great though. I love the great worm looking snake bad boy on the front.
I always like to see what they do for the alternative, because sometimes they just look really sometimes timeless in a way. Just the designs are really
different
pretty.
Style.
Definitely a different style.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the D&D news for the week. Very excited. So stay tuned for some more information around that. It'll be exciting to see sort of what developments come leading up to the March release.
Yes. So leading on to a bit of a story time now. So we're playing a campaign, obviously.
We were playing D&D, surprising enough.
So our group were in a town trying to get information.
Trying to uncover a mystery, basically.
Yeah, basically. And one of our characters kind of met her, long lost brother. It
was quite a sweet moment. We didn't realise at this point that this guy was the creepiest dude in existence. Not that we knew this, but we'll explain why.
Yeah,
but,
first, after the sweet moment where a little family reunion, everyone was crying and everything was... It was a sweet moment.
It was sweet. It was also a little bit strange, just on the situation we were in.
It could have just been a strange
far-off land. Yeah, the characters were weirdos.
You don't judge. Anyway, fast forward a little bit where we get into investigation mode, and we're in this creepy house.
Also, I would like to point out as well, and I was a player in this campaign as well, not the DM, and I think it speaks so much to our play style, the fact that this is, this person's long lost brother, but we still ended up breaking into the house and going behind his back.
We are hoodlums.
Yeah, it speaks quite well to the sort of players we were.
So we break into his house, wanting to find more information, see what's going on, try and uncover secrets, the usual bing bang boom
mystery
of our journey. Yeah. So we go into this house and we go into this room and
his bedroom. Yeah, his brother's bedroom.
At this stage, we didn't know it was his.
Oh, we didn't really know.
We didn't confirm it, but
we figured it out pretty quickly.
Yes. Anyway, horror movie moment. You walk into this bedroom and there are dolls everywhere. Now, trying not to judge again, this man might really love his dolls and antique dolls, but when the dolls all look exactly the same, that's creepy, but to make it even worse, they all looked like his sister. Which is creepy and raises a lot of questions.
I can just remember at this point as well, my character obviously being confused, but out of game, me as a player looking at our dungeon master being like, dude, what the hell?
When something is kind of so creepy or scary, you kind of feel nauseous.
Yeah.
I felt nauseous when
because he built it up to be such this intense scene.
I was just like, whoop.
It was an interesting time.
Yeah.
And then, surprisingly enough, this character just decided I want nothing to do with my brother ever again.
Yeah, well, she wasn't even there. We had to
explain to her. That's right.
To her because we're just like, oh yeah, hell no.
By the way, your brother insane.
Obsessed with you and has $1 million dolls.
$1 million homemade dolls of your image
that look like you. That's a big.
There's missing someone, and then there's.
Red flag. Red flag moment.
Red flag moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was certainly one of the creepier moments
of
the campaign.
When I just find that to be probably one of the scariest moments we've come across it in a campaign. I think.
It was not the scariest for me, but certainly one of the most creepy. It's definitely fit the theme of the campaign very, very well. So as much as I was a bit like, worried about our DM's mental state, I was like, oh, this is really well done. I was like, out of game, I was like, damn, son, I'm like, you're a bit, I'm scared. I'm scared.
Too many late nights, no sleep.
But no, it did fit the campaign very well. It certainly made for a memorable session.
Yeah. It was, definitely memorable and quite scary.
Still gives me goosebumps. He got so descriptive with all the dolls.
And like dolls are creepy as it is. So having,
hundreds of them. But anyway, into the main content for tonight. 10 homebrew rules that we think you can bring into and add or potentially talk about. Bring into your D&D table. Some of these we have used, both as a DM and as a player.
Yeah.
Some of them we haven't used because we haven't really felt like they've suited the group. But
have heard of them and...
Yeah, certainly have had success. I guess it's important to preface this as well by saying any homebrew rules or any sort of addition or change to the game at all should always be discussed about prior to the campaign or when it comes up in the campaign to make sure that everyone's agreeable on it. You don't want to be one of those DMs that just starts playing and all of a sudden the players realise, oh hey, hang on, you've just totally changed this game mechanic. So be careful with that sort of stuff as well. Make sure you are talking to your players beforehand. Yeah, definitely. And these are in no particular order, by the way, except for the last one. So it's not like the most important to least important. Just top 10. So the first one being a pretty common one, which I think most people do without really thinking about or realising, but tracking things in Dungeons & Dragons.
I think tracking also comes down to personal preference as well.
I think most of the time, or what I've seen, the people... So when we say tracking things, by the way, we're referring to tracking ammunition, like arrows. If you're an archer, if you're using ammunition, constantly keeping track of specifically, if you're running out of ammunition after fights.
There's whether it be food and water.
Yeah, tracking your food and water intake each day. Another big one that people usually don't use is tracking carrying capacity. Can be a bit of a drag sometimes as well. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with using those rules. However, pretty common to have it edited. I don't know, you've played a few campaigns, some which you've really, really liked tracking food and water.
I think so tracking like ammunition is something that I don't think I couldn't really care for. I'd rather just not track it. And carrying capacity, probably wouldn't track that either, unless it got to the point where it was something ridiculous, like, I've got 5 shields in my back and a warhammer or something like that. Something that's unrealistic. Yeah, well, generally the way I DM carrying capacity, I'm the same. I don't really like tracking the actual weight of things. However, I will say to an individual, if they're a standard, standard race, whatever, I'll say, right, you can carry 2 large objects at a time. So you might be able to carry, 1 shield and 1 greatsword. Or if something on the side, if it's not a big one, maybe you can carry a short sword on your side as well. It's kind of like, I think, I kind of can't be bothered getting to the whole numeric figure of it.
And that's what I mean, like keeping it realistic in the sense of like, right, you can carry a shield on your back, a great sword, maybe you've got a short sword sheath, but you're not going to be able to carry around 10 shields. Or, so try to keep it like more...
realistic.
Visually making sense rather than necessarily the exact weight of everything.
And with tracking like food and water, I'm really on the fence about this because like we've done it before where we've kind of tried it and then we scrapped it. So I think it really depends on the type of campaign. The type of campaign that we're doing and the people that we're with, because I always have wanted to play a campaign where tracking food and water is a thing, but it's not kind of like a thing where we're like, oh yeah, I already, like, we get to the end of the day and you ask, did everyone drink their water? And you're just like, yeah.
Yeah. Like, and that's the thing, it comes down to a lot of the players, because sometimes players do or don't enjoy that. Some people, it's sort of like playing hard mode sometimes, where you keeping track of that sort of stuff, because if you don't have enough, you gain levels of exhaustion, like there are negative side effects. Yeah. Some campaigns it's really important, like the campaign Tomb of Annihilation, which we've run previously, that's actually quite an important aspect of that campaign. It's meant to be gritty survival based. But at the same time, if your players don't enjoy that side of things, homebrew it to work for you.
And if they're just saying it for the sake of saying it and not actually tracking or taking things out of their pack, it's just like, why bother putting so much effort into doing it if no one else is?
Yeah, you got to have the right group of players for that sort of stuff.
So I'd love to do a full gritty tracking thing one day. It's just,
I'll be happy to run it, to be honest, or play, and it'd be great fun. Like I said, you just need the right people who are going to find it interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
The
second rule,
homebrew rule,
rule is combat timer.
Probably one of my favourites.
Yeah, I like this rule
or most well received, I'll say.
Yeah, especially playing campaigns where it hasn't been used compared to when it has been used. It moves along things.
I'll say as well. We're not using it in one of the current campaigns I'm running. We're not using it, and we don't need it. However, in other campaigns I've run, we have really needed it, and it's made a big positive difference.
So with the combat timer, it's pretty much essentially after you've rolled initiative and it gets to your turn, a timer starts. So it kind of, say it's 30 seconds to a minute.
Oh, a minute's too long. For me, 30 seconds is perfect. Okay, 30 seconds is a sweet spot.
So I can remember what it was last time. So 30-second timer for you to decide what move you're going to make and how you're going to do it. It just kind of takes away where people have, they don't think about it until it gets to their turn, and they spend like 10 minutes just figuring out what they want to do.
It's a common thing with a lot of tabletop games is combat can drag out. It can take a lot of time because there's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. So the 30-second combat timer encourages people to think about what they want to do when it's not their turn. So when it gets to their turn, they know what they want to do. It encourages keeping combat moving quickly, so it keeps everyone else engaged as well. Nothing worse than having to sit there for 20 minutes waiting for your turn in combat. So when you start to tune out, you might, disengage a little bit. So it keeps everything moving quite quickly, and it can make the big combats much more condensed. And also feels a lot more intense as well. Yeah. If combat's moving a lot quicker, it feels like, there's a lot going on. And whereas if you've got 20 minutes to sit around and think about it, it doesn't have that, the intensity that a lot of combat can have.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I like the idea of having, you spend your waiting for your turn. Say your turn is already done. Instead of spending your next turn just twiddling your thumbs, you're actually thinking. It makes it, it just makes it more enjoyable.
And to clarify as well, the 30 seconds is only to decide what you're doing. Yeah. You've got as much time as you want to actually roll the dice and calculate damage and all that sort of stuff. You're not under a timer for that, but you've got 30 seconds to tell the DM this is what I'm doing for my turn. Yeah. Which it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it is plenty of time. Yeah. So that's one of my favourites. Another one which can get a little bit more complicated, I haven't personally done this, but I have heard success from it, and it can work with groups, is editing the way saving throws work. There's a lot of different opinions about saving throws in the D&D community. And what I mean by this is generally what will happen in D&D is, say if you step on a trap, like you're walking through a hallway and you step on a pressure plate, maybe poison darts will shoot from the walls and you'll have to make a dexterity saving throw. And the DM will say, you need to make a dexterity saving throw. And there's a certain number you've got to beat. Homebrewing it, what you can do is, say you're walking along and you step on and I describe, as your foot hits the ground, the plate shifts underneath your weight and you can see the arrows fling, poison or darts fling from the sides of the corridor. What do you do? And it's sort of, you can't obviously go on for too long, but it gives the player a chance to say, right, this is what my character would do. I'm going to try and block it with my shield. I'm going to drop to the ground and try and roll out of the way. I'm going to step back and see if I'm out of the radius. Yeah. A player can have a bit more input over what's happening.
Yeah,
and
have a choice.
Yeah, have a choice, giving the player's choice. And then depending on what the player does, say if they do pull up their shield, maybe it's an athletics check. Or if they, drop into the ground, maybe it's an acrobatics check. Depending on what they do, gives you the check and potentially the difficulty.
Yeah, determines the result as well.
So, like I said, not something, because it can get quite complicated and you sort of can delve into a little bit of, well, that doesn't seem fair, or I don't agree. You know what I mean? It can get a little bit more complicated, but I have seen and heard good things from that as well. If you, I don't know, are wanting to give your players a bit more of that choice in those situations.
Yeah. So the next one is flanking. So
very controversial.
I was about to say, you might need to take the lead on this one, because as a player, flanking in my head is pretty much attacking from the back or attacking from the side where the focus isn't on you.
Well, that's basically, rules as written. Yeah. Flanking is if there's an enemy in the middle and there are two people on either side, like opposite sides of the enemy, they gain flanking, which means they have advantage. On attack rolls against the creature in the middle. Now, the issue that some people have with this rule is it's very easy to do. Yeah. If there's a creature sitting there, it's not hard for one person to get on this side, one person to get on that side. It's quite easy to accomplish. And having advantage on attacks is quite a significant thing. So a lot of people either don't use the rule at all and completely scrap it, or I've also seen some people... I use flanking in my games because I also allow enemies to flank the players as well, which evens it out. Yes, it's sometimes can be very easy for the players to flank the enemies, but it's just as easy for it to go the other way. So I try to even out a little bit that way. But what some people might do is introduce homebrew rules like maybe there has to be 3 people for flanking to take effect. Make it a little bit more difficult. Or, if flanking is achieved, rather than getting advantage, you gain a +2. Okay. Something small that can still impact, but isn't
like
ridiculously
having that buffer
strong.
Than just a normal attack.
100%. Yeah, so something's still positive without getting too strong.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've played with flanking a little bit before.
Yeah, but which we have, and I completely agree. Sometimes flanking can be a bit of a touchy thing, especially when you mentioned going from the front, and then just waddling around to the back and then flanking. So I like flanking. As long as it's not I don't know, sometimes I feel like flanking can be I wouldn't say bothersome, but with that rule, if I was at the front and then I feel like, oh, I want to try and get advantage by just going around the back, then I'd probably be like, oh, I wouldn't like it.
It's a little bit of strategy involved, but like I said, again, depends on the group. Some people love it, some people don't. So that's when, homebrewing stuff can become, helpful in those sorts of situations.
Yeah.
On to number 5. This is also a big one, which I actually like this rule, but I know some people do homebrew it. Moving through enemies.
Do you use that rule?
Rules is written.
I was about to say, because I'm like, I swear we haven't done that.
No. So rules is written. Sometimes I'll homebrew it a little bit.
Yeah.
So rules is written, you cannot move through an enemy square. You can move through friendly squares, but not enemy spaces. Which does make sense. However, some people don't like, particularly in closed quarter situations, say if there's a bottleneck, if there's one enemy up here and everyone's in a line, it makes it quite difficult. So some people don't like it. Some people will want to be able to move through enemies, again, as long as they can also move through you, up to the group, as long as everyone's having fun. I personally like the challenge of not being able to move through enemies, or one way to sort of meet and homebrew a little bit and meet in the middle is if you do want to move through an enemy, maybe you have to make a strength check or an athletics check to try and push past them or something like that.
Would it be affected if the enemy, say for example, I'm 6 foot and the enemy is the size of a halfling?
Well, so size does come into it.
Yeah.
So if they're 2 sizes larger than you, you can move through their square or their space, but they've got to be 2 sizes larger. Halflings also have a feature which they can move through squares. So like I said, it depends obviously on all of that sort of stuff, but generally speaking, I like the rule because even when it comes down to size, in my head, even if you're massive and the enemy's smaller, I'm thinking right, maybe they're not physically restraining, maybe they're jumping on your face or pushing you back. You know what I mean? It's not
parkouring.
Yeah. Like it would be difficult to move through someone else.
Yeah.
Maybe not impossible. Like I said, maybe you can do rolls or something to try and overcome it, but not impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And rule number 6? Yeah, 6.
Yeah, 6.
Hiding death saves. So
I love this one.
Yeah, I quite like this one too. It was something that we've only kind of recently started doing.
Recent-ish.
Recent-ish, yeah. So, pretty much hiding death saves. So, if you're playing on Roll20, you can hide it too, but it's instead of just publicly rolling for everyone to see and everyone knowing the rule with death saves, if you get over 10, over 11.
So there's actually 2 parts to this homebrew rule. Technically speaking, I don't do it this way. Technically speaking, rules as written, if you roll a 10 or higher, you succeed on your death save.
But
However,
do 11.
I do 11 or higher purely because I feel like they actually want it to be a 50-50 chance, but they just didn't think it through. Because technically, 10 or higher gives you a 55% chance.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do 11 or higher, it's 10 and 10. Yeah. So it's exactly 50-50. So if you roll a 10 at my table, that's a fail. You've got to roll 11 or higher. Then it's even each side.
Yeah. So with how death saves work, if you don't know, if you roll below 11 or 10, it's a fail. So you pretty much have 3 chances. So you'll put in a failure, and everyone would know that would be a failure. If you roll a 1, that's a double failure. And obviously a 10 is an automatic save.
20.
Sorry. I meant 20.
20 is an automatic.
Save,
so you pass. You don't go back to health or anything.
Yeah.
But you don't have to make saves anymore. You become stable. Is how it's phrased.
But with the rules of the whole death saves and succeeding rolls and all of that, is pretty much. It is public. If you roll it, everyone can see it. Everyone knows what it is, and they can keep note of it. While keeping it hidden, it kind of adds a bit more to the creativity and the illusion of the game as well. So
it adds stress to that situation. Like if you've got someone bleeding on the ground, you would feel stressed. You would feel worried.
Yeah, and it'll probably make your characters be like, "Oh, I want to check on this person to see if they're okay," instead of. Strategically, they're like, oh yeah, they're fine. I'll focus on over here.
Yeah, they've only got one successful save and no fails. They can last a little while. Yeah. Whereas when you hide it, the mindset is, oh my god, what if they've rolled a 1? What if they're about to die? You know what I mean? Like, there's this tension in the air.
It adds a bit more dimension to it, I think, and hiding them. And just like either,
I love it.
Yeah, either the DM will probably already know, but like.
Oh yeah, the DM is obviously. So what we'll do? So on Roll20, obviously you can whisper your rolls to the GM, but in person, basically what I do is if someone's making a death save, like right, come around, you can roll behind my screen. Yeah. I just hide my notes, obviously. You can roll behind my screen so that you and I can see, but no one else can see. And it's always this somber moment because I try to. Obviously, everyone tries to keep a straight face, so they'll walk up behind the screen, roll their dice, and then we'll sort of both look at each other, and then I'll sort of.
I can't.
Walk back to the chair without trying to make much of a face.
I cannot lie. Like, I feel as though I'm gonna, whatever I roll, it's gonna be on my face, and I try and not do. I'm just like, no one look at me.
You don't have a very good poker face.
I don't.
Easy to take money from in poker. So, I certainly recommend using that rule. It definitely adds a lot of excitement to the table.
Yeah.
Number 7, don't reveal hit points. Now this can be very down to personal preference as well. It can slow the game down a little bit.
I think it's mainly not mainly, but it's more. I feel like this is best when you have a healer on the team,
and especially when you've got a really role play heavy group.
Yeah.
So what we mean by don't reveal hit points is at the table when you're role playing and you had a fight or whatever. Not saying right, I've got 13 HP left. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because your character in the world
wouldn't say that.
He doesn't have HP like in his mind. It's just how fatigued and how sore and how close to death he is.
It's kind of like with real life. If you suddenly trip over and graze your knee, you don't know you're.
I've just lost 2 HP.
I don't even know what my max HP is in life. I wouldn't be like, I lost 2 HP. You'd just be like, oh yeah, that stung a little bit, but I'm okay.
And so it takes it away from the DMers a little bit as well, and puts in the players like the healer might say, oh, how's everyone looking? And if you're really beat up, you're like, oh I'm looking pretty bad. I'm bleeding. I've got I'm limping a little bit. Yeah. Or if you're doing fine, I'm a bit winded, but I'm pretty okay. Yeah. Like describing it like that can add to the immersion a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, not for everyone. Can slow the game down a little bit, but I've run it both ways, and I do really like the not just being like, how are you feeling? I feel like I've lost 20 out of 40 hit points.
Yeah.
But yeah, each to their own, I guess, with that sort of thing.
Yeah. And number 8 is editing spell components. So if you're a spellcaster, you would have noticed that with your spells, each spell kind of has a component or an ingredient to use. So you may need like a phoenix feather and stardust or something.
It's the most Harry Potter thing
I know.
I have ever heard. A phoenix feather and stardust
and a weird rock from Netherlands. And you just need you need some weird ingredients to do the spell, and you're just like, it depends how immersive you want the game to be. Yeah. If you want it to be that, like, by the book.
And, a lot of people edit the spell components part without even meaning to be honest, because it can slow the game down a lot. Generally, what we do is if it's got a monetary value next to it, so say if it's something, a ruby worth 100 gold pieces, that's something that you need to have. Whereas if it's a pinch of sand or something, we'll just assume that your character has that. Yeah. Again, can speed things along.
It just quickens things up. You don't have to stress about it, so
If you really wanted to, you could. I mean, it would make some spells quite overpowered, but you could homebrew it so that no components are required.
Yeah.
You could homebrew it so that some are required.
I guess it also depends on the campaign you run to, because if you run a campaign where you're not really going to run into a merchant like ever, it's just like trying to get those ingredients would just be difficult, so it would be easier just to go without components and or use gold or something like that. Just
to quickly answer a question as well in the chat, just in relation to our previous point with not revealing hit points. Personally, I would prefer to not make an exception. So the question was, would we make an exception for a Warforged character? Maybe have an in-game health bar like they did in Dead Space. Personally, I wouldn't be a fan of that for a couple of reasons. One, Warforged are still they're not robots. Like, I still like to think of them as obviously alive. They are living. They have a living part to them. Obviously they're very much robotic, but even if they were entirely robotic, I can't imagine them having like a screen on their chest that has their health, maybe like a battery percentage or something, but again, that wouldn't necessarily deplete in combat. So I probably wouldn't. Also, I'm not a fan of capping some races and not others. I feel like something like that would be everyone can do it or no one can do it. Like, it'd be quite an impactful thing to simply have on one race. Again, if your party and your players are happy for it to have it that way, for sure, go ahead. But personally, I probably wouldn't.
I have a silly question. Just because I know, as mentioned, Warforged question, and you're actually going to play a Warforged in our next campaign. I think you've told me this, but I just can't remember it. Warforged, because you mentioned that you think of them as living things. Are they born or created?
They're created.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're not born.
I was just like, hang on.
Yeah. Like, so there's a bit of a grey line. Depends on how you want to role play it a little bit. But I'm certainly going to be playing mine as, yes, there certainly is created parts, but there is a living essence to it as well. It's sentient, you know what I mean? Like, it's not... you can play it as a straight up robot, but that tends to not fit the theme of a lot of D&D campaigns very well. Like, that's far too technologically advanced in my opinion. It's, to me, they're powered by, whether it be a soul, whether it be like divine power, something, along those lines. Number nine, and this is one, again, very dependent on the group, but I really like this one. No out of turn speaking while in combat.
Yes.
The reason I like this one so much is because I have run campaigns where some players, and I had to sort of talk to people outside of the group a little bit. Some players like to take over and almost say and tell what other players should be doing.
It's meta.
It is. It's very meta.
As hell.
It's very metagaming. I'm not a fan at all.
I'm not a fan either, because ideally, when you're playing your character and you're playing the game, you want to do what you want to do. You don't want to be told what to do. Like, you could have suggestions or recommendations, or you could... This is going to be in character, in game. You can have those in-game discussions with your party. It's probably not in combat. It's probably not a great time to do it. But it was not out of combat and you need to do something. You can actually talk to your party and be like, oh, what should I do? What do you guys think I should do?
But within context though, like the way I see, like, say, on your turn, and I say you've got to be able to fit it in like a 6 or 10 second period, because that's how long a turn goes for. So you might shout some suggestion or instruction to someone, but not saying, hey, use this weapon because this is going to do more damage. You get to roll 2d6 on this. Not that sort of stuff. It might be like, hey, I'm going to try and flank around the back. We've got old mate is hurt over there. Can someone heal him? Those sorts of suggestions that people would be yelling at in combat.
Or it's the same as, like, say, if we're in a situation where half the team members are trying to figure out something while the other half are defending. You want to be like, oh, this enemy is weakened to fire. Wizard, get in here. When the wizard is wanting to do something else. It's just, But
even taking away the metagame aspect, I think that it's important as well, because you want each player can succeed and own and make decisions for their character themselves. They want to, make badass decisions. They want to come up with badass plans. They want to meaningfully impact their character. And if you've got another player who is constantly telling everyone what they should be doing, all of a sudden it doesn't become a group game. It becomes a game where one person's essentially controlling everyone. And obviously you still want to be working together, but you want everyone to be able to impact and everyone to be able to contribute in their own way.
It interrupts the immersion.
Yeah, it does. And so I think it's quite important. Like I said, it doesn't need to be a rule with all groups, but some groups I think can certainly benefit from, hey, you've only got a short amount of time to speak, and you can, like in combat, obviously outside of combat's different, but in combat, you've only got a short amount of time to speak, and it's got to be something, it's not going to be use this as does more dice. You could be like, hey, I need help over here. I'm feeling, something like that would make sense to combat.
Yeah. And last one, number 10. how do you want to do this? Your favourite catchphrase.
Oh, not my favourite catchphrase.
Well, you get so excited when it happens. It is
Because
exciting.
generally, so if you haven't watched Critical Role, it's being popularised by Matt Mercer from Critical Role. Generally, in combat, when there's a final blow to whether it be the last enemy in combat or whether it be the big boss that they're currently fighting, whoever gets the final strike, killing the enemy, the DM might say, "How do you want to do this?"
Yeah.
And it's a homebrew rule, not in the sense that it's actually changing the mechanics of the game, but it's just something fun that allows whoever gets the final kill to get really, it sort of excites the group.
Creative.
Yeah, it's an exciting moment from the group when they hear that phrase, like, yes, we've overcome the combat and we've defeated the enemy boss, and it also allows the player who's got the final kill to feel like a bit of a badass for a minute and get creative and descriptive. Rather than just saying I'm going to swing at him with my sword, they might say, you know what, I'm going to swing at the tendon in his legs with my sword, dropping him to one knee, and then stab him through the heart, finishing it with the final blow. Like, get creative and feel like a badass.
It kind of, it gives the player the choice to create like a final scene.
Yeah.
It's a really good way to do it instead of, someone just, like you said, if someone just rolls and they don't even know if they're getting the final blow, and they say, "Oh, just hit it with my sword," and the DM just goes, "And you hit it with your sword and it dies."
Yeah,
like, that just sounds.
It's a bit anticlimactic.
Yeah.
So it just adds a bit of excitement to that final kill. And like I said, it's great. It's a great feeling as a player when you get to have that moment of, I'm going to get really creative with my final blow. And it's a moment as well where you can sort of get a little bit homebrew. Like, say, if they get the final blow and it's like, right, how do you want to do this? And they describe something that doesn't particularly make sense with how the spell works. They've already got the final blow anyway. You can get a little bit more creative with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is our top 10 homebrew rules that we would recommend having a think about, trying a few of them, maybe not trying any of them, but certainly have a think about.
Have them there if you want to mix it up a bit, or if you've never heard of these and you like the sound of it, give it a go in your next campaign, or introduce halfway through your campaign, but obviously consult with your players. Yeah.
Should always be DM. Consulting with your players and your DM before introducing anything homebrew, regardless.
Yeah.
But I think it's time for the joke.
Yes.
What do we think? About that time?
Yeah.
I know it's your favourite time.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I can't remember if I've told you this joke before, like off air, I mean. I'm not 100% sure, but I quite like it. It is a bit of a stereotype, so if you love this race, don't come after me. I know that they're not all like this.
I don't even think I have a favourite race.
But yes, I quite like this one. Okay. Why are dwarves not allowed to drink alcohol?
Why?
Because they're all minors.
Oh my god.
Come on, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah. And like I said, I know all dwarves aren't minors. I know that. Yeah. I know dwarves are stereotypically drunks anyway, but I think it was quite good.
That was
Wholesome.
Alrighty.
But yeah. Thank you to everyone for tuning in tonight. It's been fun hanging out as always.
We'll be on every Thursday, same time, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time.
So feel free to join us next time. Hopefully you guys get to have a bit of fun and try and implement maybe a few of the homebrew rules that we've discussed tonight in your games in the future. Be interesting to see how they go, and maybe they'll make you love a whole new aspect of the game that you might not have loved so much previously.
Yeah. All right.
So we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for hanging out.
Okay, bye.
Oh boy, what a video. If you liked that, why not like or comment on it, just to let us know that you like it, so we'll try and do more stuff like this. And if you really, really like us, drop a subscribe so that you can be notified for all our additional content.